Well, first Holmes was born, then he got fat, bald, and tired. What's up, Holmes?
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Sup Holmes. Sorry for yelling, but I'm a little bit excited. I'm really tired though. I just ate all this oatmeal, and now I just want to become oatmeal, just like a thick gray mush and just be in a bed. But I'm still excited because we have Scott. Scott, how do I pronounce your last name?
LaGrasta. There's
I
a
thought
couple different ways, but I'm not too picky about it.
Scott LaGrasta is on the show, and Scott is a guy who maybe doesn't have the name recognition of some of our past guests, but his the games he's worked on, it's astounding in name recognition. Scott, can you tell us some of the games that you've worked on?
Yeah, sure. Let's see. I worked on the first game I shipped as a designer was Dark Watch for the PS2 and the Xbox.
Oh wow, really? That
Yeah.
was so long ago.
Yeah, I know. I've been doing this for about 9 years.
Awesome. Okay, so you worked on Dark Watch. Tell us more. What did you work on after that?
Let's see, Dark Watch. From there, I went to the Bourne Conspiracy, which is of course based on the Bourne movie franchise. And then I took a little detour to help out one of our other studios with a game called Rolling Conflict.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I got to fly to Sweden for 3 months and work on that. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that sounds great.
After that, let's see. After that, I think that's when I made the jump over to 2K Marin and started working on Bioshock 2, and then from there I worked on the both the Protector Trials DLC and the Minerva's Den DLC.
Oh, cool. What did you do on Bioshock 2 specifically?
Bioshock 2, I was of course a level designer. I made the Dionysus Park level.
Oh wow, cool.
That was the gallery one.
Right. And on the DLC, what did you work on?
DLC, let's see. On Protector Trials, I did. I'm going to describe them. There was one that was also based on Dionysus Park. There was another one that was based on the market from Pauper's Drop.
Oh, okay.
And then on Minerva's Den, I worked on. I forget the public facing name for it, but it was the second level. I think it was Operations.
Oh, okay.
So it was the level that had the. It wasn't the boss level. It wasn't the intro level. It had the game, like the little hidden flash game.
Oh yeah, whose idea was that?
That was actually the DLC's lead designer, Steve Gaynor. That was his idea, and he and I forget which programmer worked on it. Either Jonaman or Will was able to cobble that together, and it came out to be an awesome little add-in.
Yeah, a lot of personality in that DLC, and in Bioshock 2 in general. It's something that I think some people missed because they were so kind of intent on comparing it to the first one that,
of course.
Sadly, I think some of the unique aspects of the game kind of got lost in that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I'm obviously a bit partial, but I don't know. I think that I think Bioshock 2 was a good game. It's definitely, I think, some of the work I'm most proud of thus far.
It sold really well. Jeez, millions of people played your game. That's got to be weird.
Yeah, we got the stats for like the achievements and stuff, and it completely blew my mind when I saw that. Just based on achievements alone, over 1 million people had finished my level. I couldn't believe it. I was just like, holy shit.
Yeah, that's fantastic. How did you get started in the industry?
Wow. Well, my first job before I actually got a job in the industry was actually working retail. I sold video games in a mall. And again, this was like 10 years ago.
Okay.
But I just happened to work at a store where some game developers came in and bought their games. And so I just talked to them about games, and they eventually invited me into a focus group for one of their upcoming titles. And then from there, I guess they liked my feedback. They wanted me to apply to be a tester. I applied to be a tester. I made some really good, had some really good conversations with some people my first couple of weeks there, and in 10 weeks I was on the design team.
Whoa, really? That's a Cinderella story. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you went from, were you working at a major chain like GameStop, or was it?
Yeah, it was Electronics Boutique.
Oh, okay. Oh, I remember them. That's awfully nice.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, did I say, I might have misspoken. If I said it was 10 weeks from getting my test to going design, it was actually 10 months.
I think you said 10 months. I heard 10 months anyway, which is still an incredibly short amount of time. So what would you attribute your capacity to go from a clerk to a guy who's actually making games in that length of time? Was it your ability to form relationships with the other guys making games, or just your skill, or both?
I think honestly, it's definitely a melange of all those things. Like there was just the fact that these people came into the store and I didn't know them from anyone, but I was just talking to them about games the way I would talk to my friends. And I knew about games. Obviously, I've been playing them all my life. But it's more than just playing the games. It's sort of looking at what makes them fun. I remember my good friend Dave. He and I would spend hours playing GoldenEye, and we would just play the facility level. Like we would just crank up the difficulty and do I forget if it was double agent or whatever. You could change the sliders for like how much damage guys took and that kind of thing. We would just play with all those knobs and dials and sort of examine the outputs that came from that. A large part of getting the industry, honestly, was luck. It's a lot of being in the right place at the right time, talking to the right people. Like I said, my first day or second day at High Moon, somebody came up to me and talked to me. And they're like, "Oh, hey, well, what do you want to do in the industry?" And I'm like, "Well, I want to be a designer. I think it'd be great." And he's like, "Oh, well, I'm the lead designer, so we should talk more." And it was just, oh, well, okay, great. If I hadn't talked to that guy, if he hadn't seen me, if I'd been in the bathroom at the time, who knows where I would be now. There's so many amazing questions.
Did you ever call him a bastard or tell him he's the worst or just tell him he sucks at his job and that you hate him?
Not to his face. He and I.
The reason I bring it up is in working for Destructoid, people often want a job for Destructoid and start off by telling us how we all suck and that if they hired hire me and I can help your terrible blog to be decent because Jim Sterling and Jonathan Holmes and Conrad Zimmerman, they're all just washed up hacks and I always say to these guys, forming relationships is key to getting anywhere in general, to enjoying your life and to making it in any sort of industry. And why are you starting off with this harsh, mean-spirited? It's a lesson I hope people learn, and I hope they learn it from you because simply loving game design and talking about it with other people who love game design ended up getting you 1 million people playing your game. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. Like relations are definitely like one of the most critical things, and it's not about being a kiss ass or glad handing. It's about being like honest and forthright because people will respect that, but it's also about doing that in a way that they can be receptive to. Like your example of people saying, "Oh, your website sucks" or whatever. Like I can do better than that. Even when I was working in retail, people would come up and like I used to work at a board game store actually at the time at Conrad. People would come up and be like, "Oh, I know so much about D&D or pen and paper RPGs. Like I should totally run this store," and not realizing that there's so much more out there. Like if somebody doesn't want that, then you can't force them to take it.
Sure. And why would they say that to you? It's just, brr. I know that it's probably trying to make up for a sense of inadequacy and thinking that bravado will get them somewhere. Maybe it's Han Solo's fault. He bragged a lot, and a lot of people look at him.
Well, I certainly wouldn't blame Han for any of that, but bravado is definitely part of it. But I think, there definitely is some insecurity to it because they have to come in and, making sure that people know they're top dog. But the truly confident people will come in and be confident about what they can bring and not try and tear down the people that are already there. Yeah,
good advice. And you mentioned Conrad Zimmerman earlier. You used to work with him, is that right?
Yeah, back when I lived in Phoenix, he and I were working together at a board game store. Actually, he was my boss.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Did he have a mustache then? Is that where you got your? Because you both have such beautiful mustaches.
Thanks. No, that's a pretty recent acquisition on both our parts. I think we sort of the cosmos called out to us for a lack of mustache, and we both answered that call. I think sort of independently but simultaneously.
Do you know what Nick Cage? Not Nick Cage. I'm sorry. Nick Cave.
Oh, the bad seat.
You know what Nick Cave said about mustaches?
No.
He said that a man without a mustache is rather like a woman with one, which often makes me feel terrible. But when I grow a mustache, I just look like a sitcom dad, like That's So Raven sort of a...
No, the thing about mustaches, or facial hair in general, is you got to find out like what your face is really suited to. Like you probably can't tell on my terrible low-resolution camera, but I for a while I wanted to get some good scruff, because I'm a brown-haired, generic-looking white dude, so I wanted to look like some movie star, but like I've got these bald spots. Like nothing grows right there, and so I couldn't do a full beard. And I really wanted to. I was super jealous. I've got friends who do that, but
Sure.
I eventually kind of settled on the mustache, and it kind of it seems like it's suited to my face based on a lot of people's feedback on it.
Yeah. It's playful but not cocky. I hate a cocky
Oh.
mustache. It just makes me feel like I can't even talk to the guy. Like, oh, your mustache, it's too good. You wouldn't even look at me if I tried talking to you. Shifting back to talking about video games, as much as I'd like to talk about mustaches more. You recently also made a game for the Peter Molyneux. What would you call that? A game jam? Game developers all got together and made games amongst each other for some number of hours. Is that right?
Yeah, it absolutely was a jam. Sort of the sort of loose definition for a jam is that a short period of time with people that are generally previously unaffiliated, where you just get together and make a game, and you've got sort of your time box. In this case, it was 48 hours. And to be fair, not all of them were developers, and I say that in the sense that they weren't all professional developers. Everybody who
Right.
came is a developer by virtue of the fact that they attended. But yeah, like I went to there was the big one was in San Francisco. I ended up going to the Oakland one, and there were a bunch of people there who some of them were industry people, some of them weren't, but they all they were all they all loved games and they all wanted to be a part of it. And I think that was the exciting thing, is to realize that, especially now, like games are not in the hands of some developers in ivory towers. Like if there's a deficiency in, if you feel there's a game that needs to be made, make it. Like nobody's
Right.
stopping you.
And so people know the Molyneux or the Molly Jam thing was based on a Twitter account. So
Yeah.
weird. For Peter Molyneux, who is kind of a tribute parody to Peter Molyneux, the developer of Populous and Fable.
I,
And people took his fake tweets of like funny things that Peter Molyneux would say, like, I'd like to make a game where the camel is inside the hump and the hump is inside, just like whatever.
you can write that down. It's a good one.
And he's so passionate about it that there's this weird, you're laughing at how strange he is, but also really wanting to join with him, because that's real passion for game development. It's just take an idea and want to run with it and see what happens. And that's, a lot of people are saying that's missing from a lot of kind of mainstream AAA game development. A lot of things, and this is true of movies too, a lot of things are sequels and kind of by the numbers, whereas Molyneux, and then Molyneux as well, wanted to get a little bit more experimental than that. So
Yeah,
is that what drew you to the whole Molly Jam experience? Were you hoping to make the kinds of games that you can't make at your job at 2K Marin?
there's actually a couple different reasons. One of them definitely was, yes, like I said, I've been working in big budget games for quite a long time. But I realized that a lot of the games I love aren't, and so I really wanted to get my hands dirty and get down and actually make a game that on my own, that I could sort of say like this is me, this represents me. And it's not to say that obviously I love big budget games, like they're great. But I think that much with movies, as you alluded to, like there's such a broad spectrum of life's experience that it can't all be captured by people who have $1 million budgets. Like I think you look at things that are much more personal experiences, like Jonathan Blow with Braid and The Upcoming Witness, like all that kind of stuff. Like they're these very personal stories that like you don't need this big team behind you. If you can get past the idea that you're not going to have physics sims and 3D worlds and that kind of stuff, if you can tell a story in whatever way you are best suited to tell it, or you and a group of friends or co-developers are best suited to tell it, then that's a story you should tell. And I think with the Molyneux stuff in particular, I found myself, at first I kind of was like, oh, Molyneux, like, yeah, he talks a lot, like, Jim Sterling has the talks he does about oh, this Fable came out and Molyneux is already bashing the previous one and all that. And for a while I was very like, yeah, man, that guy, he talks a lot and doesn't do anything. But then I thought about it and I realized that sort of like the people who come into the store and talk shit, like that's the easy thing to do, but it's so hard to put your money where your mouth is and make a game that you like. And he tries, and he's trying to do things in a different way. And that kind of slowly dawned on me. I don't think it was until after I finished the jam that I was sitting there going like, yeah, it's kind of a joke, but it's also kind of not. It's this truth that's covered in a shroud of comedy in order to make people not run away from it right away.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a wonderful thing because jokes usually come from some place of speaking to a truth that maybe people aren't aware of. And the reason Molly View, I think, was so funny is because those ideas actually were kind of awesome. There was a truth to that. And there's a desire for people to do that to the point where people actually, the whole Molly Jam phenomena to me is just incredible. And I wish there's more people talking about it. Now, no, just speaking of it, your game was called? Your Molly Jam games is called Carrots, Radishes, and Lettuce?
Carrots, Radishes, and Lettuce is essentially the real title, but I sort of aped I'm very bad at naming things, obviously, but I sort of took the idea that the primary buttons you press are Q, W, and E, and I sort of bastardized those into vegetables that a rabbit would eat. It was very interesting to come from a game and not kind of start with, well, what am I going to shoot or who am I going to kill? It had this very like, well, okay, yeah, you're still ostensibly, if you read into it, you're driving people crazy and making them miss their buses and making their life miserable. So there is still conflict there, but it's not this in your face, brotacular, jibs flying everywhere kind of.
Sure. And how's the reception to the game been?
Mine in particular, I don't really know. Not a lot of people have played it, which, to be fair, the game's a bit more complicated than it really needed to be, and that's not like some kind of humble brag type thing. Like, I think I took too many systems and cobbled them together in a way that was not really readable. But I was so excited, like, yeah, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and not really thinking, again, I had 48 hours, so it's not really like I had a lot of time to thoroughly test it. I'd love to, adjust it and get people's feedback on it, that kind of thing.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, people should follow you on Twitter and watch the updates for that and to just play your game and give you feedback about it. And your Twitter account is @yo. Is it Yo?
Gasta.
No, I'm sorry.
No Gasta. Yeah, that was a nickname a coworker gave me after I ran out of gas on a motorcycle ride.
Oh, and then your Twitter avatar is a helmet guy.
Yes, that's me. That was yeah.
Oh, is that you in that helmet?
Yeah.
Whoa, you're so scary and mysterious in that.
It's the black visor. It's all a trick. I'm not really that scary in real life or anywhere else.
No, I haven't been scared at all. So we're 20 minutes in. I should probably do my quick Threadless plug. Threadless sent me a bunch of shirts, which is really nice. They're not paying me for this, but they did give me shirts, and I'll show this one off. I think it's kind of good. That's God's head in like vector graphics, and he's the main character of a game, and he's got like amount of points he can do. I think he's got 777. He's just killing everybody. It's a $10 shirt. It's really cheap. You could win $30 of Threadless money on this very show if you write me a 3 to 4 line poem about a video game. And I haven't decided. I wanted to ask you, Scott, what is your, just off the top of your head, what's one of your favorite video games ever made? Maybe that'll be the game we do the poem stuff.
I might have to go with Saints Row 2.
Saints Row 2? Interesting.
Yeah, that's just off the top of my head. Yeah, just because that was... I played 3, I enjoyed it. They kind of... they self-aware, like, that they jumped the shark. But 2 had a really good balance of being, a very good satire of the open-world genre and not going too far off the rails. It had co-op, it had that kind of stuff. It had a big world, and honestly, if they let me dress in a top hat and drive around this big purple pimp mobile while I commanded an army of ninjas, maybe it's cliche, but I don't know how you can go wrong with that.
Yeah, that's true. It's been so long since I played it, I forgot about that aspect of it. Saints Row 3 has really won me over again with the Enter the Dominatrix DLC, though. That was I
haven't played any of the DLC yet. I plowed through the me and a friend co-opted the campaign, and it was a blast. Like the sheer breadth of content they put in there is amazing. Just like jets and Tron vehicles and all that stuff I can't believe it's an amazing technical accomplishment.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's tough though. I don't know where they can go from here because, like you were saying, Saints Row 2 probably perfected the original concept of like GTA, but just a complete wild mess of it, and not even really concerning itself with the more kind of focused storyline that GTA is moving towards. Whereas Saints Row 3 was like just truly insane at that point. I don't know if they know where they can go from here. Hopefully they'll figure it out.
I don't know. I mean, I think the DLC they're coming out with kind of shows that they at least have some idea of how far to go. But I mean, yeah, I mean they don't seem like they have far to go. But I don't know. Like they can always go more and more ridiculous.
Mhm. Yeah, or just maybe maintain that level. That'll work for some sequels. Or maybe they'll make a game about sexism. Probably not. But that's a sex.
I've heard a lot of people in the trans community like talking about how, despite all the things like yeah, there's a bit of like sexism in there, like the spoilers for Saints Row 3. The like at the end you have to save the two women who prior to that had been pretty strong characters, but the idea that you could dress your avatar in any clothing and assign them any voice and all that, it's like gender was like less of this thing. So it's got this weird kind of like it has its sexist qualities, but it also has its odd inclusive qualities, which makes it a very very interesting sort of juxtaposition there.
Yeah, the fact that your lead character can literally be anything that you want, and
Yeah.
defy any sort of gender standard that there may be, is pretty amazing. I think about it. That's what a positive outlook you have. Oh, my cat's here. Son of a bitch. He's gonna
Special
hold
guest
up.
star.
Yeah, he's a dick. Yeah, I have two cats. One's nice. This one's the jerk. Ah! I got him out. Am I all scarred? Did he scar me? No, I'm okay. Okay. Whoa, so camera angle. All right, good. But I was going to say before, and that's a great point you made. It combines with what I was going to say. Big name developers are saying that they want games to grow up, and that they should be about bigger topics, more adult topics, like homelessness and sexism. But a game like Saints Row, you kind of make it what you want it to be about in part by how you define your character. You can make it about sexism if you put yourself in a gender role that's totally different than your own and kind of observe how that goes on. I don't feel this need for video games to, AAA games anyway, to suddenly take on these kind of controversial or more heady topics. What do you think though? As someone who's in there, do you share what they're saying? Do you want AAA games to be more heady and sexism is?
I don't think that I think I don't think we specifically in the industry need to make it a point to tackle big issues. I think we should speak to the issues we want to tackle, and I think the issue that there isn't more sexism and honestly racism and things like that dealt with in games is the fact that, I mean, look at the industry composition, right? It's a bunch of dudes who are white middle class guys, and I think that if we were to really try to speak to those issues that we have no personal experience with, it might come off as at worst ham-fisted and at best disingenuous. And I think if you're going to tackle issues like that, especially like the really heady issues you mentioned, you've got to do it. You've got to come correct on that, because if you do it at all poorly, the people who actually are being marginalized, they're gonna take offense by it, and rightly so. Like, I would love to write a story about some struggle that a woman faces, but that's not something I can speak to with any kind of honesty, and without doing a lot of research.
Right.
And I think that's part of the challenge, and why we're seeing it more in the indie space is that just by definition, like the indie space is just this larger group of people who aren't able to get into the industry for whatever reason. I don't think it's a lack of talent. It's often, like I said earlier, lack of luck or exposure. But yeah, like there are so many stories to tell, and just as somebody could write a book or make a little like indie film or whatever, like they should be able to make a game too. So I think that it's not necessarily fair to say like, oh, the industry should tackle bigger issues, because I think the industry could tackle them, but could we do it right is sort of the big question.
Yeah. And I tend to think that they are being done right. I don't know if you've seen Dysphoria by Antipixelanti. It's on Newgrounds. It's a Newgrounds game. It's a Flash
I
game.
haven't seen one yet.
It's a really simple game with like a little bit more advanced than Atari 2600 graphics. About Antipixelanti is a game developer. She's known for doing Mighty Jill Off. Kind of got famous through Meat Boy. Meat Boy put character from that game in their game. But it's a really good game. It combines Mighty Bomb Jack, the NES classic, with sadomasochistic thinking. And if you think about Mighty Bomb Jack, it is you have to want to torture yourself in order to play that game. And she just took that and ran with it and used it as a metaphor for S&M sort of stuff, which is really funny and it's a great game. Auntie Pixel Auntie is going through gender reassignment and made a game about it. And it's a really personal, simple, it's almost like WarioWare meets like Trans America. It's brilliant. Hopefully, Auntie Pixel Auntie won't be insulted by that. But I really felt like that game brought me there, and it was very adult in its own way. And I don't necessarily need that to be in a AAA game. The games about adult content is out there if you're just willing to search for them. For the most part.
Yeah, I think part of the problem is I definitely don't want to turn it back on the fans who love games, but I think part of the reason that AAA games are sort of going for, the mainstream, I attributed it earlier a lot to just the demographics, but I think it's also, it's a large business. And if there's not, I don't think in the next couple of years is going to be a game that can tackle really, really tough sociological issues with, a multi-million-dollar budget. Because it's like films, right? You can't make a film about a very marginalized group and then expect it and then use a huge budget and expect it to sell really well, because it's people have to understand that there's sort of the right medium for a game the right medium for a message is not always a AAA game. It could be a smaller budget game and things like that.
It's I guess I can't get upset at people for getting noisy and saying that they don't want games to be like that, AAA games, but hopefully they can understand that it's just like in movies and TV shows. I can't think of a TV show about sexism. Is there sexism in the show that I missed?
There's sexism, but not. I can't think of one that addresses it pretty directly as something you shouldn't do.
Yeah, just in general, it's hard to take on that kind of stuff for multi-millions of viewers. And I totally forgot we have this chat thing. I'm sorry. I was so caught up in our conversation. It's so great. People have been asking me questions this whole time. Like a dink, I've been ignoring them. Sorry, guys. Here's a question. As a designer, this is from Rinse, Wash, Repeat. As a designer, do you like to give people choices, or do you prefer to create a scripted experience for the audience to enjoy kind of in I'm assuming he means in kind of a linear, direct way?
Yeah, I'm all about the player experience. Honestly, I mean, that was one of the things that really drew me towards working on Bioshock, was just the sheer breadth of player choice that you could give them. And yeah, eventually a lot of it comes down to which weapon am I going to use in this situation and all that. But I think there are these sort of what we call player-driven narratives, where the player will set up their own experiences and sort of take what they will from it. And I feel like my job as a designer is to provide a playground for people to set up their own fun in. I think there's definitely a place for scripted events and things like that, but I much prefer to give the player this, when possible, give them a really rich toolbox of things that they can just mix together, and just see how things work together. So I think that's the real spirit of fun and what games can do uniquely. I can read a book and maybe it's a choose your own adventure, but by and large there's a fixed number of outcomes. And if I watch a movie, except unless it's like Clue or something like that, there's again a fixed number of outcomes. But when I play a game, anything can happen. I mean, look at the stories that come out from Saints Row 3, GTA, even the videos from was it Skate, I think, where the Tony Hawk one with all the videos where it was this compilation of crash videos where people were flying through the air and smashing into things in comedic ways, but they were telling stories that the developers never intended. Mm-hmm. I find that really compelling.
Absolutely, me too. In Minecraft, there's so many. Some a video company, all they do is make Minecraft videos, kind of telling their own stories with Minecraft. They have 1 million subscribers. They're doing better than Destructoid is in terms of delivering content that people want. So great job, you guys. But do you think that makes it less art? One of the big things, and it's a kind of an old conversation, but now that you bring it up, I'll just run with it. If you are letting the player create their experience somewhat, does that no longer make it art? Are you then just making kind of tools? Are you making paintbrushes, or are you making paintings? You know what I mean?
I think the idea that art has to be something you present to somebody in its completion is and in its entirety is it seems like a bit of a fallacy to me. And maybe that's just because I work in an interactive medium, but I think that actually no, I don't think it's because of that. Because honestly, my fiance is an artist. She's got a master's degree in art, so her and I have a lot of conversation about what isn't art is not art. And I think she's coming around to my side, but we've definitely had some good discussions. And I think my point there being that consider performance art. Like some people don't consider it art, but that a lot of that comes down to what do you take away from it as the experiencer? Like art doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? If there's nobody there to look at it, then is it art, right? And so
Yeah.
if the observer isn't there, then they have nothing to get from it. And so I think bringing them in and sort of acknowledging their contribution as the viewer is important.
Right. I'm going to tell you a quick story for fun. I went to art school. I went to the undergraduate for art school. And at the end of the year one year, they turned our cafeteria into this giant, like, weird house filled with different hallways. And you walk down one hallway, and there'd just be a toilet filled with blood. And you'd walk down another one, and it'd suddenly be all dark, but you'd be walking across pebbles and just, like, listening to pebbles. Then you'd walk in another place, and there'd be a woman's head that would open up, and then a cat would come out, and then a mouse would come out of the cat. And that was art. But it was up to me to choose what hallway to go down and whether I wanted to go down it at all. And that really put me in the place of the person who made that bizarre installation art. But it was still art, definitely to me. Even though I had the choice to move around their head the way I wanted to, I was still experiencing their brain from the inside out, which to me, great video game design is just like that. Sorry. Why am I talking so much?
That's a good story. I like that.
I suddenly got so self-conscious. I'm going to do another question. What is your criteria for the best level ever? Asks Oroji Star. I said his name.
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
What are my criteria? Well, that's deep. Let's see. Well, a lot of it does depend on the game. I think that a level can be best in a game, like you sort of have the best level in a game, or the best level that a game could be. I think there's sort of this saying in game development that there aren't a lot of bad ideas, but there are a lot of ideas that are bad for this project. And so I think that the best level in a given game is the one that works the best with its with what the game does. Like back when I first started working on Bioshock, and I swear I'll get to your answer in a bit. When I started working on Bioshock, I had a bunch of ideas for like, oh, it'd be great to do this and great to do that. And the project leads were really good about reining me in and being like, no, that's not what the game's about. Like that goes completely off the rails. It tries to introduce a mechanic for a single level and then forget about it, and all those are bad things. But my criteria for like what makes like the best level, it's the one I remember the most. It's the thing that is like the most compelling to me at the end of the day, the thing that I can look back on and be like, man, that was good. And things that inspire me to make more levels or make better levels. When I play something in a level and I go, oh, I gotta steal that later, or borrow that. Then I think that is what makes the best level. I definitely couldn't like pick out a good, like what I think is the best level of all games of all time. But I think like the first level that jumps into your head is usually the best one.
Yeah. What do you think of comparing kind of the science of the level design of 2D platformers like Mario Brothers or Mega Man 2? When I think level design, I immediately just think about how they introduced a challenge to you in just the right pacing, and how the challenges were just different enough from each other to make you have to think, but not so different that you had to like start all over in terms of your learning process.
Yeah.
Do you think that kind of level design, that 2D flat level design, applies to the kind of stuff you do as well? And if so, in what way?
I think it does. Not directly, but there's this old philosophy that I forget who said it. I should have done some research, but it's this old philosophy called good design makes use of all. And so the idea is that all experiences can contribute into some kind of design. And I don't think it was originally about game design, but I think it applies. The pacing and things like that, those are all definitely important elements. You just sort of have to kind of wrap your brain around things in a different way. Like use a really nerdy example here. Like if you're learning code, right? If it's your first time learning a language, you're going to be really confused. There's going to be a lot to kind of wrap your mind around. But then you start understanding these sort of core concepts of variables and loops and declarations and that kind of stuff. And then once you go to learn a second programming language, you start looking for those touchstones, like, oh, how do you declare a variable? How do you initiate a loop? How do I define my functions and all that? So bring that back down to design, like when you start realizing what makes good user experiences abstractly, then you can sort of lay those down as a template over the game that you are making or the game that you want to make, and figure out what about that is going to be compelling. Like you listed pacing as a good example. Like that's a very good example, but in different games that can mean very different things. Sure. In a more skill-based thing like as you say, Mega Man or something like Dark Souls, there's a lot about trying to give you the right roll-on of skills and abilities and monsters, and not leave you completely overwhelmed. But then in a game more like a more scripted game, a tightly scripted game like, say, Uncharted, it's less about the actual enemy roll-on and the powers and weapons, and more about the experiential roll-on. Like, and in that way, it's more like movies, where what do I want the player to experience now, and how do I best foster that experience?
Whoa, dude!
Sorry, yeah.
Just like you did it. That's the brain stuff that people want. It's hard to get in that zone, especially with a total stranger. Just be like, just gonna let you know all the stuff I know, and my brain's just gonna.
Don't steal my secrets. I need a job.
That was awesome. Thank you. I should do. I only have 20 minutes left. I'm gonna do some more questions, and then hopefully I can get to ask you some questions myself too. Can you name a game? This is from Diju Area. Sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong. Can you name a newly released game that you like a lot? You mentioned Saints Row 2 earlier, but that's not all that recent. What's a more recent?
Absolutely. Fez was it kind of came out of nowhere. Well, no, that's not true. It for me, it came out of nowhere, I should say. I wasn't really too jazzed about it. Like, I saw some videos, like, oh, okay, that looks like an interesting game. But I wasn't like, well, there's a bunch of other stuff I want to play. I got other things on my mind. I'm not going to deal with that. But then I came home and my roommate had downloaded it, and he was playing it. I was watching it, and I realized there was a lot more to it than I initially thought. And so I'm like, what the hell? It's the weekend. I'll go buy it. And I bought it, and I spent like the entire weekend playing it. And it was just amazing. Like having to pull out pencil and paper. Like I haven't pulled out pencil and paper for a game in 15 years. But just the game is an amazing achievement, and the way it just keeps making you think about different things and flipping established tropes on their head, sometimes literally, and making you go through all these steps. And then I definitely won't give any spoilers for it because it needs to be experienced, but the game changes like about halfway through. It changes in a really profound way, and you start playing the game. It almost becomes a different game, and it's amazing to me. Like everyone should go play that.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. Fez, I worry that Fez looks too retro for its own good in some ways at this point. Like when it was first announced, something 5 years ago, the pixel art resurgence was like a big craze, and people are already kind of burnt out on that now. But it's much more than just a pixel art retro game. It's a really well-crafted, smart game, and just
it draws you in with the aesthetic, but it definitely it's got the staying power of like an actual of a very well considered game.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Let's see. Cheese Pirate asks, would you? Oh, sorry, that's a poorly written sentence. I believe it's. I think they're asking, what do you think about a new take on the Bioshock series? Of course, Ken Levine's doing Bioshock Infinite, but what do you think of Bioshock Infinite, and what do you think of the Bioshock series in general? Would you do a new take on it if you had the power to do so, or what do you think of the direction it's in, and what direction would you want it to go in?
Well, let's see. I mean, first off, I love it. Like, obviously, I played the hell out of the first one. I sadly didn't really play the second one because when you work on a game for 2 years, you kind of, I don't want to say you don't want to look at it anymore, but you kind of you've seen it go through a lot of its paces. And you get into this weird sort of like unstuck in time kind of thing where you remember things that aren't in the game because you saw a version that existed at one point but then got taken out, and other stuff that got put in and you didn't realize it was there. So I definitely love the series. I think the yeah, I'm excited about Infinite. I can't wait to see what they do with it. Yeah, I've had friends who've worked on it in various capacities. So I'm eager to see. It's all people that I know to be really smart. So I'm eager to see what they're going to come up with. Um, what I would do with the series, man, I don't know. Like Ken told such a complete story at the beginning of the first one that I think we had a real challenge with the second one, coming up with what should happen in that world, and still satisfying the fans who I think people really wanted to go back to Rapture, but that's one of those things where it's like, is that story told, or is there more life in it? And I think, as evidence, well, I would like to say as evidence by the sequel and the subsequent Minerva's Den DLC, I think there definitely are stories to tell. And I think if I had been given a chance, honestly, the idea I had at one point, and I wish we'd been able to release mod tools, because I would have loved to have seen what people could do with it. But I actually wanted to do a bit of a cliche thing, but I wanted to have you experience sort of life through a Big Daddy's eyes, but the eyes of a Big Daddy who had been driven slowly insane by being separated from the sister he was paired to. And so it would be this weird, like, you're chasing the little sister down these corridors, and sort of using the idea of what goes on in somebody's head, and the different experiences that can happen in there. And that was sort of alluded to in the little sister level, where you see the world all pristine and all that, and then as soon as she interacts with it, then it flashes to this the grungy, terrible world it is. But
sure. Oh yeah, that would have
really spoke to me.
Wow, what a nice idea. I hope they run with that. Because that's something video games can do. They can put you in the place of someone who you might not even like or want to be, but learn how they experience the world and relate with them, whether you ever wanted to or not. They should make a Bad Lieutenant game. Have you seen that movie? I tried watching it, and I just can't relate, because he's awful. He's awful. But if I were to actually have to live through him, maybe I could learn to not hate him and his coke snorting off the prostitute's butt and all that. Yeah, just something bad.
Yeah, I love games that sort of make you play through the eyes of ostensibly a villain, or characters that are not really sympathetic, because I mean, I've been tired for a long time of villains that are just villains for villainous sake, and I love the idea of starting off with somebody who, when you first see them as the villain, you're like, they're completely reprehensible. I could never understand why they are like they are. And then just these slow flashbacks, or tips of the hand of why they are like they are. And yeah, like that would be a game I would love to make, is one where you start off hating this guy, and then by the end you are sympathetic towards him, and you understand where they've come from.
Awesome.
That could be really powerful.
Yeah, I hope you do it.
Something else to do, like, you know what? Honestly, like, ideas are so little and execution is so much in the industry, or in indie. Yeah. Like, even if somebody has two ideas, you can make a completely different game. Like during the Molly Jam, I was sitting there, working away on my game, and I heard somebody, like, the next seat over talking about, like, what they would do with that exact same tweet. And I was just like, oh, what if they make my game? But then I sort of realized, well, I'm doing it in this way, and I don't think other people would interpret it in that way. So
right.
Maybe that's another jam waiting to happen, is one idea done in several ways. Who knows?
Oh yeah, that's a brilliant idea. That would be great. Let me see. Oh, it's hard to do this. I can scroll through them. Okay, are you excited by the new control methods being thrown around on consoles? This is from Rinse, Wash, Repeat again. Connect, Move, Wii U, etc. Are those things that you've even... And being a developer, maybe you've already worked on some stuff for those various components.
Well, let's see. Abstractly, I'm very excited by it. Concretely, I think we need to find the right games to make with those input peripherals. Because I think, like, if you look back towards back to the Wii, when the Wii first came out, and everyone was super pumped about, like, oh my gosh, one-to-one sword fighting and lightsabers, and how great is this going to be? This is a new era. And I absolutely bought into the hype. I was super thrilled about it. But then the realities of it came into play, and you realize, until the Wii Motion Plus came around, that there really wasn't a good, like, one-to-one. I mean, obviously compare the first Red Steel with the second Red Steel. Like, the first one didn't have Motion Plus, the second one, the first one didn't, the second one did. Mm-hmm. And the second one was worlds better for it. And so I think people trying to shoehorn the Connect and the Move and all those things into games that don't want that is doing a detriment to both the peripheral and the game itself. I think if people want to make Move games, they should make Move games. If they want to make Connect games, they should make Connect games. I think the most compelling thing right now to me is what From Software is doing with the new Steel Battalion.
Right.
Which I think they're doing it the right way because they've got the controller, but then they're augmenting it with the actions and the voice command. Mass Effect 3 did the same thing, where it's like, yeah, you don't need to use it in its entirety. You can use elements of it, or you can combine it with existing methods. Like, if the voice recognition works really well, then use that. If the height recognition works really well, then import that so that I can stand up and it will create an avatar for me in Saints Row 4, 5, or 15 or whatever.
Right. Yeah, it's. I'm assuming it's. I take it to be, and this must be hard for you. They might come at you and say you have to shoehorn this, and this feature, be it motion controls or online or something that you didn't intend. And whenever the tools are leading the design decisions as opposed to the ideas, you could get yourself in trouble just chasing kind of a gold rush of all these tools that people want, be they online or motion controls, as opposed to the ideas being the star of the show. Does that make sense? I talked. Hope it made sense.
I think it's possible to do that. Like, I think you could say, I want to make a game with motion controls, and I think you could absolutely do that and do it well. I think you can, as you were saying, you can kind of chase that, but I think you can also chase any idea. You can chase any concept can be spun out beyond its worth, and the same with any kind of input methodology. And I think the key is to figure out your game's hard points. Like, what is not going to change about it? If I'm working at a big publisher, but I should also say that, like, these are all like my opinions. Like, definitely don't attribute these to any of the companies that I've worked for or currently work for. But if somebody said, all right, Scott, you're the game director and it's got to have motion controls, and they're like, that's not, that is a go or no go thing. I'm like, okay, that's my starting point. I'll work from there. And you just have to make sure that every idea you have works in harmony with that. If I'm doing motion controls in a very imprecise medium, like if I was working a couple years ago on a Wii game, and they were like, all right, make a sword fighting game, then I would be like, well, all right, the precision isn't there quite yet. So how do I work with that? What's the best way to do it? And honestly, I think I would have come up with something similar to what the Red Steel team did, where they basically took your kind of broad movements and interpreted them as best they could. I don't think working towards constraints is ever a bad thing. You just have to be aware of those constraints and make sure that any decision you make revolves around those constraints.
Right. Well, that's open-minded of you. It's good. It's good to get the word from someone who actually knows what they're talking about, instead of just me talking, as I often do. We only have 10 more minutes. Threadless. If you want to email to Holmes, it's holmesupholmes@gmail.com if you want to win $30 of Threadless stuff. I got this shirt from there. It's God in a video game killing everyone. $10 shirt. It's good. And $30, you get that shirt plus shipping and probably another shirt. It's a good deal. holmesupholmes.com. Write me a poem, 3 to 4 line poem about... I'm going to go with Trio the Punch. I can't say no to Trio the Punch. Are you familiar with that game? It's an arcade game.
Can't say.
Yeah, you're a normal person in a lot of ways.
Let's not go that far.
yeah, we're all abnormal in our own ways. But Trio the Punch, it's a game where you can either be like a jazzy muscle man with his hat on backwards, a ninja, or I can't remember who the third guy is. And it's by the creators of Karnov, and you have to look it up. Look up Trio the Punch on YouTube. And
okay, I'll check it out. Yeah. Nothing wrong with a muscle man in a backwards cap. That sounds pretty awesome.
yeah, he's a real hunk. He's all shiny, like how old 90s video.
I think you're tipping your hand for your Halloween costume this year, I think.
That'd be pretty fun if I could pull it off. All right, I'm going to get my question in before it's too late. So, like we were saying before, Jade Raymond specifically did a big interview, and she's very nice and smart and likable in the interview, saying, well, I wish there was a video game about homelessness, or I wish there was a video game about sexism, and why can't we do that? But going through my mind when she said that was, why don't you just do that? because you are Jade Raymond, and maybe you won't be able to do that with Ubisoft, but you could just call up like 10 guys and be like, hi, I'm Jade Raymond. I'd like you to make this game for me. You'll get a name for yourself on the internet. It's going to be a small budget game. It's going to be a game with, low poly graphics or low sprite graphics, but it would still be about that. She could just make those games happen, and she wouldn't even have to pay me one. If she called me up, I'd work on her game. I'd make her graphics for her. I'd work every night on it. And yet she doesn't do that. So is there something I'm missing when it comes to kind of this, how some developers want games to be more than what they are, but they're not actually going about doing it? Is there a disconnect there that I'm not understanding that validates why that's not happening?
I don't know. That's a really interesting question, especially when you attribute it to a big budget developer who it seems like would have all the power in the world to do that. I don't know. One thing to consider. I mean, it's sort of we kind of touched on it a couple different times throughout the course of this. Is are there people who are capable of making those games with an honest bent? Like would they really truly do it justice? The idea of making a game for homeless people, like who is interested in purchasing a game about homeless people,
right?
And I guess I don't know, Condemned 1 and 2 did pretty well, but yeah, so it could be the kind of thing where people are reluctant to tackle it because they don't want to do it poorly, and they don't want it to do poorly.
Right.
So I think both of those could cause damage to the medium and to the message both. Like I said earlier, if you make a game about homeless people and it comes across as poorly done or poorly researched, then people aren't going to want to do that kind of stuff really potentially ever again. I mean, how many game genres have kind of started to fade away because like you said earlier, it became a gold rush where people are now sick of FPSs, and they're like, oh, well, yeah, they still sell well, but people, on the internet, Destructo, other sites are like, yeah, man, why is everything in FPS? Why is everything in FPS? And it's like, well, they sell. And it can be kind of a problem where, when you come into, again, a big company, they have to consider money issues. You can't make a $30 million game without selling games appropriate to that amount.
Sure.
So if kind of forget where I was going with that, but
I think you completely.
If you end up making the wrong type of game, then it can kind of do more harm than good. And
right.
I think she may be subtly pointing that point out. That's me putting words into somebody else's mouth. But
no, that's a good guess. Thank you for your guess. And Jade Raymond, we love you. I meant no disrespect, but I was just confused. Yes, you could make those games. We have 5 minutes. I'm going to try to get all the questions I can do. Bob the Catmull asks, have you been surprised at how people have beaten a level in an unorthodox way? We can run long. Oh, wait, that's from Conrad. Oh, that's nice. That's fun. Maybe we'll be able to run long. We'll see. But anyway, yeah, Bob the Catmull asks, have you been surprised about the way anyone's ever beaten your levels?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, I came up in tests, so it used to be my job to do that, and it was always, I kind of got the smug satisfaction when somebody would come to me and be like, oh, what's the repro step for this? How did you do this? And I'm like, and I would show them, and they would be amazed that it had happened. And then I found myself on the flip side of that, not explicitly beating a level, but there was a time when we were getting pretty close to ship, and somebody had come up to me and said, hey, like, you can jump over, you can basically use this power to get over here to get into this area that you're not supposed to get to. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I thought I had really plugged all those holes, but I mean that's why we love tests, because they find those things. As far as like actual players, players in the outside of the industry, I don't know, like we don't get, at least none of the games I've worked on have gotten like really like deep down metrics like the ones that I think Gears and Halo have, where you can like see where a person was standing when they shot this gun.
Oh,
but
right.
yeah, I mean, sort of anecdotally reading stories on the internet, and I will admit to having watched YouTube playthroughs of people playing my levels.
Sure.
Because I want to see if they're having fun. I want to see what they like, what they don't like, where they are along for the ride and where they're not.
They make me so self-conscious. I can't even watch any of the videos I do after I've done them, let alone have
Oh,
to.
I'm cringing the entire time.
Yeah, it must be so hard. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, good for you for
But
having.
yeah, it's always interesting to see people play and people who can give feedback beyond this sucked, that sucked. Like people who really like can say, you know, even if they don't like it, somebody who doesn't like something for a good reason, or not I don't want to say a good reason, but a well constructed reason. I think it is it's always interesting to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. I personally love sequence breaking in games, and I love it when sequence breaking, in case people listening don't know, that's when you go against what the developer wanted, what the designer wanted, and find your own way to explore the world, maybe skipping a level or skipping a boss or getting to a part in a level without the power-up you were supposed to have. It's a really brilliant thing, and what I hope for, and you can make this game if you want. You can just take my idea. A game that doesn't let the player know whether they're sequence breaking or not. Like a lot of stuff where you're like, am I supposed to have been able to do this? And kind of playing with the language of video games to a degree that will cue you to think that maybe you're cheating, even though you're not, or maybe you are cheating but you don't know it, that sort of thing. I'd love for someone to take that on.
Is that actually? I want to say I was on a big Dark Souls kick about a month ago. I started playing a little late, but my lord, I think I had like over 130 hours into that thing. But that did a pretty good job. Like there are a couple sequences you can't break, but like right from the start, like if you go like down the stairs and you find a bunch of skeletons, like they respawn and you hit them for very little, and when you do manage to kill them, they respawn. And a lot of people, it's fascinating to read who was like, oh, I must be going the wrong way. And other people who just pushed ahead and said, holy shit, I heard this game was hard, but I didn't realize it was that hard. So I think it's a tough thing to do because people, there's a big risk of people not engaging with the game any further or feeling lost. And there's definitely some value in feeling lost, but the player that has to be a pull. The player has to want to feel lost. You can't say, hey player, I'm going to make you feel lost and you're going to enjoy it. That's a much harder sell.
Sure. But Dark Souls really made you just feel like you were getting slapped in the face and like just dirt thrown on you while you're trying to sleep. And yet people loved it because it respected the player's ability to figure things out on their own without having handed to them. And I think
it came out at a very good time when there are a lot of very like hand-holdy, cinema style games that just wanted you to experience everything it had to offer. And Dark Souls doesn't care if you experience everything they have to offer. Like their lore is great, but it's all buried in finding all these items and reading their flavor text and all that. So it's a move of confidence that they're so willing to just put that stuff out there and be like, I hope we've done this right, and I hope people love this world and this game enough to want to explore it and find all the nooks and crannies and break sequences if they dare and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a nice victory that game did so well. I think so. When it goes against what a lot of people criticize Japanese game development for, saying it's too they don't let you experience the game your own way. It's too handholdy. That game's the opposite of handholdy. Moldenite asks, do you dream ever? Does dreaming ever play a role in level design, problem solving for you? You ever dream of a level and then try to design it, or dream about a level you're designing and it gives you hints as to how to design it better? Whoa.
That's a good question. I can't think of an example where I've done that, but I don't know. I think I would say indirectly probably, because like I said earlier, like we pull from all different kinds of sources when, it's like, oh, I read this thing in a book that I want to kind of do my take on, or I saw this movie and I thought they did this wrong and I could have done it better, or I saw this really cool looking tree outside and I want to make an even weirder twisted version of that tree and put it in my level. So I will say yes, I have, but I can't think of an explicit example when I've done that. Like I really wish I could point to something I'd done that people can look at on YouTube and see. And I was like, that was my dream come to life, but can't quite do that. So.
Well, you've got a long career ahead of you. Who knows? Maybe
hopefully.
The whole game, like Kurosawa's Dreams was a movie Akira Kurosawa made. All his dreams. You could be the next one to do that. I want to keep doing the show, but I think we're over time already, and my battery is dying in my computer, which makes no sense because it's plugged in, which tells me that maybe my computer just broke. But thank God we got through the show.
Yes.
It's so much fun to have you on the show. I appreciate it.
Yes, wow. It was great being here.
Yeah. Will you be on the show again sometime? Are you working on a game right now?
Am I? Well, I got some side projects I'm working on. we'll see how if they come to any kind of fruition. I'll give people a couple little hints. One of them is a like a secret agent satire type thing, sort of a Naked Gun style like gag a minute type thing. That's going to require a lot of writing on my part, but it's coming along. And then I have another one that is it's it's a little harder. I keep getting stuck on it because I'm trying to do procedurally generated noir crimes, basically, where you're in like I have this thing that generates a city and tries to like populate with people, and then people who have emotions that commit crimes. And right now, I'm having a really hard time like bringing like the evidentiary chain back to like making it so a player can actually figure out what's going on. But that's the one I'm most excited about, but also is the hardest for me. So if anyone has any ideas, I'd love to hear about it.
A randomly generated noir crime sim? That's amazing.
Don't call it amazing until people can play, because before then it's just an idea.
It's a fantastic idea. I really hope that you make it. And the Naked Gun, I want more comedy in games. I think most people do. So thank you for doing that idea too. That's really exciting. Oh yeah, one last thing. Okay, holmes@gmail.com. Email me a 3 to 4 line poem about Trio the Punch. You probably never played it. Look it up on YouTube. I think it's called Please Don't Forget Me is the subtitle, and you won't forget it. Trio the Punch is an unforgettable game. And you can win $30 for Threadless stuff. You can get a shirt like this. It's one of their cheaper shirts. You can do that thing. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Scott. I guess we'll close it up. I have to because my battery is literally at 3% left. I feel kind of ashamed.
All right, yeah, it was great. It was great talking to you.
Yeah, likewise, Scott. Take care. Bye. Say bye to everybody. Bye.
Bye. Great questions, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, they did do good. Who knows? Maybe we're just...
Well, first Holmes was born, then he got fat, bald, and tired. Stop, Holmes.